I'm ready whenever you guys are.
Cool. Nina, you ready?
Yeah.
Cool. I affirm part 1 is framework. Ethics is divided between ideal theory and non-ideal theory. Ideal theory acts with just demands in a preferred world. Non-ideal theory acts with just demands in a world that's already unjust. Preferred non-ideal theory is the starting point. First, ideal theory fails to get action in an unjust world. Most of 5 rights. As Neo concedes ideal theory enables you to say what a society is unjust, but not tell you what you would be able to do. We find yourself in an unjust society and correct that ideal theory. Represents an ideal target would require us to start over the clocks and start over. It is with no fact worth what is required. It's a non-ideal theory that starts from the reality and seeks some correcting. Second, ideal theory should switch particularities. Let's say universal feature of existence or unless a single experience of it in epistemology use ethical theory, most of 5 rights. Theory since it's looks in each around frame second that reflect the experience of a privileged group crucial realities that we extract away from oppression. The ancient code featureless non-ideal theory recognizes people will be affected by the social location, and non-ideal theory necessitates consequential instead of following rules that assume an already equal playing field. We should take steps to correct material injustice. The role of the ballot is to vote for the advocacy that best minimize oppression. Prefer the role of the ballot first. That anything else is just intellectual gymnastics. What about talking about oppression? Exclusive press debaters. Smith 13 writes exclusion adversary debate to discourage black students from participating. Computers attempt to win right rushing abstraction to distance from material routes that activities deal with everyday community norms would have to better to intellectual gymnastics to see power pronunciation, but the only constructive strategies to acknowledge the reality of oppressed, then find strategies to deal with the issues debated about learning potential and laboratory potential. Second is that means-based theories, class acting, the consequential limit order explain necessary enables. Senate Armstrong 92 writes, genealogists claim that if I promise to mow the grass, there's more reason for mowing the community to mow the grass, starting the mower, being able to be the mower, but not all that. I have a more reason to start the mower since not promise to start my mower. Genealogists might respond that there's a more reason to do it. Therefore, necessary enable. This principle is very different. If I break my promises, necessary enable for giving up 2 people to eat their promises, then give up deontology. Second, third is that moral theory say starts with material violence. No one will never complain or even think of a moral system unless they didn't like their current situation, which by definition means that they have to have material harms inflicted upon them, or they wouldn't care enough to start thinking why it is bad that that's occurring. Part 2 is the advocacy plan text result. Public colleges, universities, in the United States on our strict constructed speech that criticizes the military's policies. Part 3 is offense. Patriarch practice on campuses run rampant. It's equated with treason, lines of critical thought or silence. Higher education to be cooperative, the military industrial complex, reducing role of teachers should mere technicians of members of college campuses are routinely fired. They criticize the military, causing a chilling effect. This discussion multiple empirical examples to confirm Wilson 15 writes. Effort to science faculty and students can make others more reluctant to speak openly. Not only machine active freedom, live persistent here, sending after sending email criticizing American policy to Iraq, anti-military abuse, professor job at risk. Professor Kirsten said, Senate Air Force said that I'm curious to thank you to support you in killing Jackson style damage. Kirsten was suspended, undergo a post-Senate review. Under the chicken professor was Senate for saying that killing is wrong. Well, consider Senate that few cases since you proved that left-wing thought police rule the college campus might sense survey active from the opposite left-wing critics of the Bush administration suffered by far the most numerous serious violation of civil liberties, patriarch correctness, right, supreme after 9/11, and this is devastating because higher education is uniquely key institution that can provide us reasons for conversation and action that snowball and collusion shifts away from militarism. True in 07 race higher education is one of the most crucial institutions where the democratic forms of power can be critically identified and critically engaged with. It is one of the few spaces where young people can think critically learn their values and refuse the obligation security state and develop skills necessary to defend democracy. The true impacts 8-point cultural shift. The after students refuse to admit the militarism. This creates a cultural shift away from the glorification of violence. Chatterjee and Maria 14 writes, the most control of the notion that patriotism that abroad the academy rests on ideologies or define the enemy. The police knowledge reveals a battle cry defending the integrity of the nation that requires producing a citizen by regulating violence. What is permissible to discuss in the university and militarism is part of the culture, making people disposable, justifying creating everyday violence against the Middle Eastern. The Apple students and professors refuse this culture. Chatterjee 2. The culture of the contrast of racial aspect of the terrorism synonymous with the Muslim, the Arab. This culture imagery literature as well, violence against the anti-Western and people with democratic self-governance. The criminalization of those considered the threats to national security. Muslim and Arab American students are subject to multiple levels of critique and insecurity. This outweighs 8-point root cause. Once violence was normalized and anything including negative impacts that occur, no one cares about them, making them impossible to solve. Viewpoint aggregation. Most recently, impacts occur constitution to every single side. Day by the time my impacts occur, negative impacts occur the after massive way and magnitude. Viewpoints political spillover. Acronyms use the state resources to and their acronym freedom to create policy change. Proves that liberals and university creates concrete material impacts. Starting at 8. Right, so the university curriculum came back to include subjects previously and treated only instances ways the safe funded university provided the resource space for our growth for a diverse form of knowledge for us to engage in generating ultra knowledge and foreign policy for us to work with a wide variety of external groups to cover United States intervention policy in Central America, particularly Nicaragua, because they present thought out policy in Central America is only a single instance. They sponsored for us to exchange our expertise with a wide variety of external groups trying to change prevailing policy. Part 3, part 4 is theory. First, all theory arguments have an implicit afflex standard. It's hard to affirm at 8 point because the 7, 4, 6, 3 times 2 B point strategy from negative ability to select the RC based off the C point. A PRX Adler 15 runs in late either run negative 61%. This also means presumption improvements to full affirmative. The round is tied at the end. I did the better debating, but also there's nothing in the case that trigger presumption. Second, vote after I win a counter certification. 8 point flexibility. Negative flexibility when on odd players after seeing the same ability that true are. True are too short and when it's new shell and play the against the true and the arguments. So that means reciprocal layers rather than more on reciprocal avenues. That's not a problem. Long true and P point rush policy only negative top out because only have to burn to be top. Well, let's see. That means the RBI compensate for the negative unique access value 3. Striking type of speech is good. SCOTUS rule that any implies limits all the objects from 2 ball and I till 11 right. So small of the United States to the meaning of any of the majority. The word any considered alone cannot answer speaker said LC any film may or may not include films shown in another city. The word any must be limited in their application. That benefits 8 point average shift without expecting African shift just by saying those things farms don't link to generic principles and claiming something isn't CPS. Kills for instance, if arguments can be shifted neck has no chance of winning people and resolve booty. The benefits and harms of a different speech will change depending on what type of speech it is. You can't compare a Zionist and bench or hate speech because they're about completely different types of speech. Key difference just convict the debater. C point impact on limits. Research overload is good, gives the skills shift through massive data and the information error. McKendall's 10 writes because we're suffering from info overload. They see the patterns and connections that are important. Also focus on the info that's important for it. Evaluate app theory, lexicon, prior neg theory. The neg is ability to win their shell and they'll be back the app shell in the long 2 hour, but that's not possible for me to be back the shell in the short 2 hour. The 2 hour explodes next to 2 hour. Definitely sit down on one argument in the 2 hour for the swing. A point is just about the structure of the app neg, so applies more rounds specific for norm setting. B point comes on the highest layer. Bruce cannot fairly determine things like the truth, the true in our show because I don't have adequate time to respond to. Thus all sides link questions are skewed. 5 upgrades linear theory, meta theory destroys neg from being infinitely abusive. Otherwise they'll always win. Meta theory ensures I can engage on theory, not lose on the highest level. 6 that debate has no consistent rules. Every debate has a new version of the theory. Also 6 that textual reference on Topicality because they beg the question of why we ought to have rules because we always just change what the rules of the game are.
Did you read everything? Sorry, my timer howls.
Yeah, I did the tag of Enoch, and then I didn't read part 5 or the 7 argument.
Okay, and then also not the method stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. Ready?
Yep.
I want you to concede that you won't extend the 6 point about how debate has no rules to take out theory in the 1 AR.
Yeah. It's just an argument to take out things like truth tests.
Okay, but also textuality. Okay, that's fine. Let's talk about evaluate app theory lexically prior to neg theory. So that just means no matter what shell you're winning, if I'm winning a shell, I can't weigh it against yours, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Or you say that neg can win their shell and beat back the app shell. Why does that mean app has a slight strategic disadvantage with beating back shells? Why does that mean that your theory should always come above my theory? Why is that not overcompensation?
Using things like size of link is impossible because you cannot adequately evaluate 2 hour size of link when I don't have time to cover your shell. So it's literally impossible to evaluate anything anywhere else.
Literally impossible. Okay, well, let's talk about the app advocacy. So you say that people are being fired in the status quo. Would the app do something to prevent people from being fired for criticizing the military?
Yes, it would not let them do that. That's literally what the advocacy does.
Okay, do you have any arguments in the AC about how that's constitutionally protected speech?
So you can read arguments why that's not, but clearly it's constitutional.
Okay,
so
cool. Wait, clearly. Okay, we'll have that debate. Let's talk.
It's pretty obvious. Americans love criticizing things. It's written in the Constitution.
I think okay, that's fine. Let's talk about theory. Wait, why is the fact that it's harder to affirm mean that I have to win an afflex standard? And what does it mean for an afflex standard to be implicit?
It essentially means that with every interp you read on the counterinterpretation, there's an implicit afflex standard, right? So
all of your arguments have an implicit afflex standard. Okay, yes, what is the okay? How do we determine how much afflex is a good thing?
Right, there's general weighing arguments that people make all the time on interp counter-interp debate. It's really easy. You could go A point. This gives you a huge reciprocity advantage, which way overcompensates you. B point is outweighs on magnitude.
Okay, that's fine. But the 3 point is just the 3 point is only to be leveraged against T any, right?
Yeah.
Bad. I want you to concede that you're not going to trigger presumption or permissibility.
Yeah, that's literally in the case. It literally says there's nothing in the case that triggers presumption.
There's nothing in the case, but I don't want you to trigger it at all.
I mean, it depends on the nature of the round, right? I'm not going to do anything that purposely triggers it, but, right, if, there's, terminal defense, I didn't choose to read terminal defense, but if you read terminal defense in the app,
Okay, so where is the only card in the app about why militarism is a bad thing, Chatterjee and Mara?
Yes.
How is there sufficient ability to challenge militarism just because people at public universities are criticizing the military that we stop legitimizing violence against people that aren't in the U.S.?
Evidence that this is a good starting point, and it means students learn how to contest militarism in other aspects of the world.
Does it weaken the military's power to do the app?
No.
All right, 2 off case. I'm good.
interpretation. Academic freedom is not constitutionally protected speech. The Supreme Court ruled in Garcetti v. Savalas and Morse v. Spredig that the First Amendment does not cover academic freedom. Moshman, that academic freedom is not protected by the First Amendment. In 1988, the court ruled that because a student newspaper was part of the curriculum, it fell outside the domain of the First Amendment. Court assumed the First Amendment in schools applies to speech outside the curriculum. Federal courts has been clear that in matter of curriculum, school officials have broad latitude to restrict expression. Curriculum is a First Amendment free. First Amendment freeze on the Supreme Court determined in public employees do not have the First Amendment rights when they are doing their jobs. By 07, First Amendment does not apply within the curriculum and thus provides no constitutional.
Now it's really late.
Constitutional protection. Beats the violation. Supreme Court has held that academic standards that interfere with First Amendment speech can be constitutionally applied on college campuses. Post 91, the court has held that a university's mission is education, never construed the First Amendment to deny university authority to enforce reasonable regulations compatible with faculty publication consistent with academic standards may be judged and so forth. CX is finding. You said that you would prevent people from being fired for their political viewpoints, but that is not constitutionally protected speech. Hilton 14, the First Amendment says that the thing about you losing your job, getting dissed on the internet, or even popped in the mouth for saying something offensive or hurtful. Now standards maintaining topicality comes first. Best links to fairness and education. Able 15, it would be better if everyone debated the rest is worded than subtle variations of affirmatives, which would fairly lose their entitlement to choose negatives or respond to well-being is not maximized by sticking to the rules of common sense. Otherwise, people are unlikely to act on mistaken calculations. This is what happens if we reject the topicality rule in favor of direct appeals to pragmatic consideration. This justifies debating propositions that are completely irrelevant to the rest, but better to debate. There's no principled way of requiring any particular threshold of similarity and good on jurisdiction. If the F is not T-vote next, since the ballot asks you who did the better debating in the context of the tournament given resolution, so it's impossible for you to endorse their advocacy. Also feels that education better for us to have discussions about restrictions of speech rather than academic freedom. Since that explodes the case list, also enables us to have access to a greater breadth of literature about certain restrictions on college campuses, and that's a larger issue that impacts the entirety of the whole population, where there are less articles about firing people since it's not a First Amendment issue, which is key to research. Ground D is the voter furnace, the voter debates, the competitive activities. C is the better debater with the round skewed education, is the voter twice schools, fun debate, and provide portable skills for the real world job. The debater, one substance is prevalently skewed. If I had to invest time after and also the one in strategy to check these two deterrents of lawyers, discourages future unfair practices for fear of losing around using competing interpretations. 1 point race the bottom. People will be incentivized to barely meet the line while being abused. The 2 point collapses to competing interpretations. Use offensive to determine whether reasonability is good, which concedes the authority of competing interpretation. Saying reasonability is reasonable is circular. No RVA is one topical clash. RVA is force the entire run to the debates, which moods them to education about the topic usually affect RVA. Discourage debaters from reading theory for fear of losing around, allowing abuse to practice. That way, the world with some theories better than the world with no theory, which is infinite abuse. 3 point resultability. RVA is just by voting a debater up just for being fair, which logically results in both debaters winning, which is irresolvable. That comes first, since every debate needs a winner now. Second, on the interpretation, AF may not claim presumption and permissibility ground, and claim that AF theory comes flexibly prior to neg theory. Abuse the violation to both of those things. C terms always puts you at a substantive advantage on theory. Theory leads to a race to the bottom in norm setting, since it literally doesn't matter what norms what theory shells I read, since you will always be at an advantage. Also, the fact that you have presumption and permissibility ground means that it means that you have an easier ability to beat back my shell, since you can just win sufficient defense or make the theory debate unclear, which means that you also have a substantive advantage on substance, since you use time few to justify both why you should have AF theory and why AF theory should function on a higher level, and why you should have access to both things on substance, which means that you overcompensate for time skew, which makes the run super irreciprocal across apply the voter now and see. Individuals must be considered to have a right to property, otherwise it's impossible to consider them as volitional conduct. Maximum wish and object of choice have to belong to no one is there. Contrary to rights, if it were not within my power, freedom would have been a private self with the use by its choice. With regard to an object, by putting usable object beyond the possibility of being used, reason can contain no prohibition against using such objects, and will be a contradiction by out of freedom with itself. Is therefore an operative presupposition referring to the object of choice is something which could objectively be minor. The ability to lay claim to property rights necessitates the existence of a collective will that can have power over individuals. Con 2, when I will something external will be mine, I declare everyone's under obligation to refrain from using that object. This involves acknowledging them under obligation to refrain from using what is theirs. The unilateral will cannot serve as a course of law for everyone with regard to a position that is externally contingent that would infringe upon freedom, so it's plain will putting everyone under obligation to provide assurance only in a civil condition, something the external and the amount of your substance consistency with the unilateral put away your generic comments. The abuse is content political philosophy, not moral philosophy. Kept the card. I contend that public entities have an obligation to restrict speech that criticizes military criticism, as this is a contradiction. You cannot, well, if it's non-existence for intent contest, consider seditious speech a public crime. The intention behind seditious speech must be to encourage effort to subvert the government, instigate revolution. To have such a right would be have the right to destroy the state and the state. As it means through which it's possible, such a right would involve having the right to annihilate, right to have right to subvert would not be. I have the right to replace right with my criticism of the military is bad. 8 point, the military is the actor that makes right claims conclusive. It only has force necessary to establish the social contract. So contesting legitimacy of force questions the existence of one's right, which outweighs B point, institutionalizing criticism states a contradiction, since it legitimizes the unilateral opposition to itself, dissolving the idea of a unified society. Now, go to case start on the interview. You said that also first off flexibility. 1 point, it begs the question of a bright line. Even also, first, education is a constraint. You should not have infinite flexibility. But 2 point, you get to spec any app. You just cannot spec based on academic freedom. Textuality determines what constitutes textual, and also 3 point, it's much harder to negate, since 8 point, you have infinite prep time and can choose your advocacy. Viewpoint judges give you leeway. C point, you get to collapse things, which means that I cannot predict contradict everything. Also, you should prefer analytical arguments over statistics, and say only those account for causation. You say would ask if you win for counter interpretations. One, I've cross-apply the arguments to afflex, but also 2 point too much afflexibility. Your theory always, you say, or your theory already comes first, which means that you will definitely be at an advantage if it's sufficient for you to win off of, if it's sufficient for you to win off of my shell, but also 3 point race to the bottom you, and also 3 point if you get access to one of your theory and meta theory, that means that you're already at an advantage. It overcompensates since since apps have an advantage on theory since they get more time in the 1 AR. You say reciprocity since only they can read T, but it does not matter since T and theory are both theoretical arguments, so it does not mean that it's qualitatively different. Also, 2 point, you can say if and converse, then read T definitions of what that means in the 1 AR. You say that specking is good first, CX is binding. You do not get to cross-apply these arguments to literally anything else since you said that they only apply to TNE, but also you say that limits are that research overload is a good thing. But 1 point, the fact there should be lots of ground, but there should not be literally unlimited steps, and that prevents us from having the best substantive engagement on every topic. Now, you say app theory lexically higher. 1 point race to the bottom in norm since you will always send theory to be 2 point app will be super unfair all the time since they never have an expectation of engagement. C point app is at an advantage since they get to collapse things into 2 AR, and judges will give them leeway. Also, it's better for able to compare since it will lead to better norms. Now, you say debate has no constitutional rules. 1 point, there has to be some conception of what it means to affirm and negate, but also 2 point textuality can text the judges agree to be in debate, which means the Enoch argument doesn't apply. Now go to the AC. Well, off of Mills, 1 point ideals are inevitable. They shape the way we engage in any sort of institution. The idea of race is an ideal that abstracts from a particular situation. 2 point, the ideal is something that we have to strive for, which enables us to have better moral standards. You say off of Smith 13, absolute rights are a good thing. To enable us to think of individuals as someone who cannot have their right be deprived in any situation. Off of Senator Armstrong things. 1 point, this just means that things can be a means, but that does not mean that only consequences matter, since we can have some constraints on what things can be instrumentalized. You said that theorizing starts with violence, but 1 point, it begs the question of the appropriate response to violence. Even if violence is something that exists in certain institutions, they're not the responses are not always justified. But also 2 point, the theorizing starts with practical reasons. This is the reason that we think about ethical questions in the first place. And then I didn't read the step 1 case.
Cool. All right, CX. All right. Good?
Yeah.
Cool. Let's start on the second interpretation. So your standards seem to prove why my paradigm issues are wrong, but why does this mean that proposing them were proactively abusive? This seems just to be an OCI.
No. Like, it's a reason that it's bad for you to try to propose that norm.
Why?
And it's also like,
what is the justification?
It becomes a nib because I have to beat back all of those arguments in order to have like access to substance or theory.
Why doesn't that apply to all paradigm issues? I.e., like, you have to beat back reasonability and the RBI to read the one and then shell.
Well, like, I would say that it doesn't have the same sort of irreciprocal burden. Like, also, I just don't think that's true. Like, I don't have to necessarily beat back reasonability because I could read a shell that's consistent with a bright line. But, like, maybe it would be bad if you read, like, a super unfair...
All right, that's fine. Let's move on. Let's go on to the topicality interpretation. So you say academic freedom is not protected. So this is just about their curriculums are not protected. Why did let's go on the Hilton 14 evidence says that the First Amendment doesn't stop you from losing your job. This seems to prove why restrictions would be constitutional. Why does that mean that the speech is not constitutional?
What do you mean? No, so like the argument is that you say that you would remove like restrictions of constitutionally protected speech, but like people being fired for having a certain political view is not a restriction of constitutionally protected speech. Like you don't have a constitutional right to keep your job after like expressing a certain political viewpoint.
That seems to be no. Your Hilton 14 evidence says you don't have a right to have your job because restrictions would be constitutional because it doesn't protect you. I.e., like the classic example that your Hilton evidence is referring to is about if you say something offensive. Why does that mean that generally having one is bad? It's to prove why restrictions are constitutional, but why does that prove that speech is not constitutional?
I think you're misunderstanding like what the T-shell says. So it's not that like militaries that like a speech code, for example, that a university would institute where they were like, oh, you can't criticize the military. It doesn't say that that's protected, but that the university is like allowed to fire whoever they want based on like their political views or something. That's not something that's protected by the First Amendment. So it's like there are certain responses that count as restriction and certain ones that don't. So like it's in the same way that like they have the right to fire someone who like
That's fine. Let's go into the NC. Let's go into the offense. So the Varden 10 evidence and all your criticism of the military bad say that willing non-existence of the military would be offense. Why does that mean? Why does the AF allow people to will non-existence of the military? It seems to just allow criticism of it.
Yeah, so those are like the analytics beneath it are establishing why it doesn't make sense to criticize like if the military is like legitimate as an institution or based on like
the military killing all the citizens. They're just like genociding them. It would be criticizing that be impermissible underneath the NC.
Do you want me to answer that? Like, if there's a point at which the state has been dissolved, then criticism of the military would make sense. It's just a question of like the way in which you're allowed to criticize.
So order is 1AR theory, shocker, and then the NC shell, then topicality, and then what?
And then the AC, and then the NC.
We're on the AC?
Starting on framework and then top down.
Cool.
Or actually start on the underview and then the framework top down.
Okay.
Wait, so it's the new shell, my shells in order, bottom of the app.
Then framework, offense, NC.
Okay.
Cool. I'm ready.
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Cool. Also, change that after the neg must.
Oh.
Everyone good?
Yeah.
Yep.
Interpretation. The neg must not read multiple theory shells. Both implications drop beta violations. They read multiple shells and they're both drop beta. C stand for strategy. After one subspeed back both shells. Well, they have to win one critical through one through definitely harming quantity of access. About second clash focusing on the nature of contribution of a single shell ensures nuance theory debate over certain bait practices that executed education because it clash on a single force interaction rather than just robotically sending drop arguments. Also, key to long-term drawings to the conclusion of a single truth. Truth is interpretation rather than spreading souls to the norms are and to the best theory practices are implemented future now across all their voters. None of them are unity bidirectional. Even if that's use rest watch differential underneath them now. Meta theory comes first and now ways interpretation. 8 points superior to valuing their shells. The first insight the ability to read their shells. B point theoretical pieces always worse than substitutes because the theory education is the theory is the highest layer determines the valid precisely where one can lose arguments on substance and by going for other arguments to just go for weighing. Now the multi-plank interpretation, counter interpretation, often the conversation interpretation, epiphany interpretation is side bias. I need to justify all these things in order to compensate for side bias. Just the justification of them in the first place. Even if the arguments about why side, even if side bias goes negative and they win those arguments, it's not to understand it because the counter interpretation solves and just says that you deserve these instead. This outweighs your offense versus impact understanding fairness views are just compensation seconds of probabilistic evidence views of their side bias, while their views are speculative and probably less likely. Now, over the interpretation first, it's just an OCI. The interpretation was why they should why I should be able to class all these things, or why I overcompensate enough. The reason why I should lose 8 points that resolve video. Otherwise, videos will run theory on computer interpretation, drop video on paradigm issues in general. It's just one of meta theory debate and then a meta theory debate in the way here's one theory reason would drop arguments on it. If you guess people norming other interpretation debaters would not be able to develop paradigm issues for fear of losing ground on them, which we don't consider clash for the paradigm issues in the future. Now, the line by line they say on the reciprocity friends standard for link your interpretations will prove would be bad. They after have access to all these things, but it doesn't work. Why I shouldn't need to concede them to, or why it was bad for me to claim access to argument seconds. I do not overcompensate because of one to the same, which means it would justify why I should uniquely access these arguments. Now, topicality interpretation. First, I meet your interpretation. The restrictions that I said that protect fields for professors being fired could just be topical restrictions. I things that they say outside of class, which the evidence of the solvency of when you see justified seconds I meet. This just proves why restrictions are not justified. This was procrastination, but not that those speech is unconstitutional, which proves there's no link to arguments. Now, counter interpretation often the conversation sheet. Never interpretation topic literature. Academic freedom is obviously key part of topic literature because just that's how speech goes. But probably I always start offense 8 point of predictability because it proves that I wouldn't be able to access our offense because I wouldn't be able to predict the interpretation. B point is where's the highest quality of offense. This actually comes for a second. So the athletes would never interpretation. Now the line by line the interpretation I just went for this semantics for a second. First, this applies to my time as well. You can go for the top literature rules motion to the offense 98 seconds. That act util. This is just false. This is just a rule usual argument. But obviously that just falls back in act util. This is the best of rules because every circumstance. Say voting jurisdiction does the ballot ask you to do this, but the ballot just say and specifically conscious resolution means it's no relevant. Now they say kills education because they cause the limits are overload, but across the impact and that limits overload would be a good thing because it forces you to think on your feet and things like legislation. They say there needs to be some limit, but this my interpretation still allows some limit. I can't defend like not the top efficiency. I still result the argument. They say that I said wouldn't cross apply to other things. I said that it wouldn't necessarily apply, but obviously I'm allowed to make applications to limit standards, which you do in this speech. Now, case. Starting an flexibility argument, extend the alpha G evidence appears so we analyze have those arguments for they say proves causality first, there's no impact causality, there's no proper reason why that's relevant. Second, the large sample size of the alpha G checks back the argument proves it doesn't necessarily apply. This also takes into account all their analytic points to prove that people can do this in the test, which means there's no net offense to the interpretation. Now the after the after comes Lexi parts in this argument. This causes infinite. They say it causes infinite. It's obviously not true because you can just be back interpretation to win substance. Now the case to be proper, they can see the off substitution with parameter when extend this 13 ever says that the NC is just intellectual gymnastics justifies oppression for social hours all their offenses to pre-field warrant all their arguments are close. They say we need absolute rights because planet first next week, but the AC relies on absolute right. I think that oppression is bad in every circumstance. Second, if the cross-nation is bad, damning for you when they say that genocide would be a good thing under your interpretation because you're not a good instance of this. Now, this is also a reason why case outweighs theory because preaching can necessarily cross by all these arguments. Now, the NC warrants these proof. There's no who's white property. He acts agency. There's no reason why we need agency, especially when the 15 chain warrants why this is conception should not abstract philosophy would be a bad thing, which means that my offense comes on my higher light.
Okay, wait, what did you read in the 1AR?
So I did not read the Varden evidence, and the AT smite speed must be bidirectional, which is like a starting point for my arguments. None of them were exact.
Wait, which things were not exact?
All of the AT spikes must not be bidirectional. That was just a starting point for my arguments, right?
Okay. And then for multiple shells, no RVS, drop the debater bad. You just read verbatim what's there except for the light blue thing, right?
I didn't read the blue stuff.
Okay. But you read everything else, and that was just the only thing you read on layer theory.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, overview new shell, NC shell, you're not going for T, bottom of the F?
Yeah.
And are you going for substance?
I to change it up.
Okay.
All.
That's fine. You can sign this.
Okay. When everyone's good.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Framing issue on his shell was first that he definitely violates since he had multiple spikes in the AC. Since he had multiple spikes in the AC, which would logically be dropped through there, but also 2 point the shell is super ridiculous since he doesn't have the ability to solve abuse. Since he doesn't have the ability to solve abuse now on the shell proper A counter interpretation egg may read multiple theory shells both with the implication of drop the data. B I mean C standard standards 1 point norm setting enables me to check multiple abuse practices, which leads to erase the top. Also 2 point deters you from reading super unfair since you have an expectation that it will read multiple shells 3 point resolvability. Otherwise, people will just read super long clunky interpretations in which they combine a bunch of shells in which it's irresolvable to compare offense. That always everything since if it's irresolvable, we cannot have critical discussion of things, but also terminal defenses. People just do literally the exact same thing against your position. Also 4 point reciprocity. I need a shell for every time you're unfair. Otherwise, I need a shell for every time you're unfair. Also 5 point leads to erase the bottom. Since I read one shell in the NC, then you will just be ridiculously unfair in the 1AR since I don't get a new shell in the 2AR, which always everything. So to just my literally influence views. Now the line by line. And now on the line by line of your shell. First I read a T shell and a theory shell. Which is logically distinct. Now on the line by line, you see strategies you do. 1 point you get meta theory. 2 point you get to extend function to AC. 3 point 3 point you can extend things like substance waste theory, which sells back 100%. And also 4 point strategy skew is worse. If I don't know, if strategy skew is worse, if I just combine all the shells off of the clash argument. 1 point no one turn there's better clash and enables me to clash with every unfair argument in the AC, which enables us to have more theory discussion, which always everything. Also meta theory. You say that meta theory first. My shell's also meta theory, but also 2 point prefer the shell that was read first in the round since my abuse is responsive to yours, which means that I would not have been unfair in the way I read my shells. If you were not unfair, if you're not unfair, also you see that meta theory some strategies you cannot engage, but obviously have the ability to answer my argument substantially. You see that theoretical abuse is worse than abuse, but that doesn't apply to precluding your shell over my shell since both are shells are abuse on theory. Now go to my shell. Extend the interpretation that after now claim presumption permissibility or unclaim that after comes flexibly prior to negative theory. Extend the reciprocity standards instead enables you to structure the round in a way that is bad since your theory will logically always come on a higher level than my theory, but also you will be at an advantage since some have a better ability to beat back my shell. You have conceded the norm setting argument since it will lead to worse norms. You don't have expectation to engage with my arguments. Norm setting outweighs everything equal on longevity since it impacts our engagement in future rounds. B point and B point on scope since it impacts the way in which lots of people engage. Also C point on magnitude since it defines the starting point of a given round. Now on the line by line, you say that there's no link since group here. You're off of your side bias argument first, or actually I will resolve side bias on the bottom of the If I win side bias losing, that means that you should not have access to these arguments since it puts me at a structural disadvantage since I have to waste precious negative time in order to justify answers to these arguments. Time skews key to fairness since all arguments can be treated linearly for try now. You have conceded a causality, but obviously we care about whether things actually make negative structural disadvantage so that it is harder to lose rather than if it's just random correlation. So line by line, when you say that when you say that you can see that it's harder to negate since A point F gets infinite prep time, you say the negative ability to prep 2, but no, you have more prep since you just preparing for one action specifically since the plan where I've just split all my prep against different things. That also always all of your arguments since empirical claims also don't take into account the specific skew on this topic, which means that and the fact that people can't read plans, which means that I definitely outweigh in causation. Also, you say that it has happened in a lot of situations, but that because for different reasons. For example, A point people are choosing bad affirmative strategies. B point and B point previous topics have been neg bias, which means that my arguments definitely outweigh since they prove who's actually at a structural disadvantage. But also, you can see that the judge will give the ath leeway in order to overcompensate for the fact that they are at a disadvantage, which means that it's definitely harder to get. You say that there's lots of information that's taken into account, but no, it's just a statistic about the number of debate times that the negative debater would run around. Obviously, I don't have the ability to take into account things like the affirmative strategic ability or how much they are drilling, which means that my arguments are definitely preferable on this question. Now, prefer arguments about judge leeway. A point they are irreversible. Things like statistics could definitely be changed if ath makes better decisions, but if the judge is giving ath more leeway, there's literally nothing the neg could be able to do to compensate, which is also go back to theory. Since I'm winning side bias, all of your the only way in which you could generate offense on the counter interpretation, you can see competing interpretations. They need a comparative reason to prefer would be if the ath is at a disadvantage, so they need these arguments in order to compensate. But here are reasons. But first, even if you win, that it is harder to affirm. Here are reasons you don't get access to that. A point, the norm setting claim. These are bad ways in order to compensate for side bias. I have to waste my time on these arguments instead of substantive claims, which means that it would definitely be worse for norm setting. Also, you said that the logical now in the line by line of arguments, you said if it's no CI, it doesn't make sense. You said people will run theory on paradigm issues. No, people will not run theory on paradigm issues because it wouldn't be unfair to argue for drop the debater or drop the argument in the same way. Whereas my abuse is specific about education and fairness. Since even if I clash with these arguments, I'm still at a substantive disadvantage when I'm engaging. You say also you said that norming, since it leads to clash, we should be able to read these arguments. But no, if you wasted your time and you could have been writing better theory arguments, which led to a better theoretical debate and better clash, which would have enabled more substantive discussion. So actually, now go to AC. Or on the arguments about how actually that's fine. Go to the Smith card. You look around because you conceded that a term to Smith that absolute rights are a good thing, since they say that we can never treat minority lives as disposable, which definitely outweighs everything. Given that you've not consented any other arguments, you can see that consequentialism is incoherent, instrumentalized individuals. Even if case always theory, since theory is a rule that's imposed on people. But 1 point theory bad is a rule that is imposed on people, which means that's contradictory. 2 point if debaters do unfair things, then that will logically exclude other people from the debate community. But also 3 point it's a performative contradiction. So you should vote him down if he says that theory is a bad thing. So go to the NC extend that it is a logical contradiction. If we have militarism on college campuses, if we label criticisms of the military on college campuses, and that means that people are contradicting the existence of an unilateral rule. We cannot extend any conventional offense, which means they should err heavily and act on the substance.
Cool. 240. What was it? I didn't write it down. It's 2 something.
You can just take however much.
Why don't you take 2 minutes of prep for being a lazy shit and not writing it down?
Yeah, forget to, but I'll be.
So order is just case, and then Nina's shell?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, I'm Gucci.
Cool. They say don't extend case offense, but I suppose he said that they conceded case offense so extended. That should be sufficient when they literally make no sincere responses to it, which means you don't buy their last second argument, which means that as long as we win the primary debate, they obviously lose the debate. They extend the Smith 13 evidence that using things like the Kant NC is just intellectual gymnastics, which cross apply. They say I conceded a term, but they must have not have been flowing because I had 2 responses to it. The first one they conceded is a non-unique sense that the AC said we have an absolute lies to not be oppressed, i.e. the which of the minimize of which is the basis of the frame, which minimize oppression means that there's 0% link to their term. Second, they conceded the argument that it's empirically proven because when they justify genocide and cross the nation, this offense outweighs their link turn on probability, since it proves that even if in general abstract human rights are bad, are a good thing, that their NCO justifications are a bad thing because they are intellectual gymnastics and circumstances to justify things like genocide, which means that I've done 6 Wang, they didn't know Wang, which means you have to err from the theory. They say that all the arguments are all concede that theory is still legitimate practice. None of the arguments are alternative. There's not a reason for formally vote against me if my argument. I can see the argument's wrong. So it's not a performative voting issue. Now, the bond of the case is side by side. This is just a mess. You probably should not vote on it when there's a bunch of Wang arguments either way. And you probably can't decide, especially when the other 15 numbers is some empirical warrant says that empirical warrant sometimes test analytics if they're even if your arguments are slightly ahead on the abstract arguments, they're not relevant. Also, I'm just going for the OCI. I'm mostly going for the OCI argument, which obviously this argument does not take out. Now, theory. Except in the first spot, this argument is just an OCI. It's proven why the paradigm issues I've proposed are incorrect and that I have overcompensated. Not a reason why I should specifically lose for that debate. They say that they wasted time on this, but this is just an RVI justification. I wasted time in the counter-interpretation, which means I should lose, but I should win. But they have conceded that, but they read RVI is bad in the 1 and C, which means the argument does apply 0% link to this argument, and it doesn't matter. But even if they win the argument, I'm going to win the net benefit interpretation, and they're going to outweigh. Extend the resolvability claim, which is just functionally dropped in the last speech. It says that it's impossible to resolve around it, so they justify infinite amount of meta regresses in the world of interpretation because debaters would lose for proposing paradigm issues, that lose for proposing counter paradigm issues, etc. They say that you say that they should lose for doing that they wouldn't be deterred, but no, your other arguments that they will be deterred. That's my argument. Now, this resolvability standard outweighs your offense. 8 points is you cannot apply any of your arguments, so the judge is literally impossible for them to vote, which means outweighs your offense. Magnitude causes 100% impact of fairness because the judge never should be able to decide a ballot. B point, it means we want to control internal link to arguments. It means that it doesn't matter if we convert to things like norms. If debaters are irresolvable, which means you cannot produce good norms, which means the link turns all their offense. Now, the norming debate as well. Also going for the standard says that their interpretation deters debaters from proposing paradigm issues because they're afraid of losing. They say that they should be in fact that would be a good thing because it would better say theory norms in the first place. So first, that this is a new warrant for why you should drop the meter in the 2 hour, which means you probably should not evaluate it. It is not relevant. They need to justify what their interpretation is offensive in the 1 and C when they claim it is offensive. Second, that we should also be able to have it. We should also be able to have debate because it determines what those norms are in the first place. Now, what those norms are in the first place, obviously, is a prior question to the world of your interpretation, which means more important. Also, which are offense on probability, since I'm very unlikely to be deterred, since I will just drill with Paris to get better at the Q debate, which means that the question of learning what the best norms are is more important than deterring debaters, since deterrence is uniquely unlikely. There's no weighing done in the last speech on the norming versus the time series argument on versus the OCI debate, which means the fact that 2 does some weighing means you have no choice but vote at.
All right, y'all. So I'll give Nina thoughts first, Parker, and then you and I can talk after. Cool. Give me a second, Nina, to look at everything. Okay. So first thought for you, Nina, is that I would say I'm like a significantly above average theory flower. And so like maybe the only person in the country who's better at flowing theory than me is Bob. And you were just too fast on the shell that Parker read. Like I think you made 4 arguments against strategy skew, but I really only caught like one of them. And they were like lightning fast. And so that's something that, you know, you have to weigh out for yourself, because like maybe a first year out or like a judge who's a little bit younger than me would vote on it, but like I'm just not going to vote on it. I have no idea what you said on some of the strategy skew claim arguments. And so you know, I've recorded the video, and you can see my flow as it goes along, and you can listen to yourself to see if you really were that fast. But that's just one thing you want to keep track of, because it would really suck for you to lose the debate because your judge didn't flow it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And obviously in this round, it's not relevant given Parker doesn't go for that shell. But that's just something you want to keep in mind. And like the rule of thumb I always tell my kids is like, if your argument is less than 5 words, it's not an argument. It probably should need like 2 sentences.
Was it like a speed thing, or like the arguments were too short?
I think that the fact that you were blazing fast compounded it, but I think the arguments themselves, like it seemed like your first 3 arguments on strategy skew were like alt solvency claims, like you get meta theory, and then you get a couple of other things that you mentioned, and it seems like you could have just grouped that into one argument that would have been like, no strategy skew, tons of alt solvency, A point is meta theory, B point is this, C point is this, and that makes it clearer that it's all part of one argument. You know what I mean? As opposed to like, you just split up all of the alt solvency into like its own argument. And so like, I have no idea what the second and third alt solvency was. I just caught meta theory.
Yeah.
And then your 4th argument was like, the strategy skew is worse if, and then I have question mark. I have no idea what you wrote after that. And so that's something that you just want to keep in mind, especially if somebody's flowing on paper. There's like no chance they write all that down. And that's something that a lot of people don't understand until they become judges. But like, you are good enough to win TOC, and it would really suck if you don't win it because somebody doesn't flow you. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
That's one thing you should think about because like debaters like Ram Prasad, their career in part ended because like one of the judges on that panel versus Chris Kim couldn't really flow everything. And so that shit is real, and so that's something you should think about. Cool.
Yeah.
So then on your shell, um, I am under the impression that you've dropped a no link on reciprocity. It was the first argument the one AR made on the line by line of reciprocity that like you don't have to concede the arguments. You can like respond to them. I think Parker doesn't go for it because he has no offense to a counter interpretation. But that no link does seem to be terminal defense on theory. And I would definitely put lip service on it if I were you, or differentiate your norm setting argument from the reciprocity claim, because I did think you had like arguments that were not just based in reciprocity in the 1N on your show, but I think that the 1AR sort of treats it as if you only have a reciprocity claim.
Mm-hmm.
And like you're just, I think you meant to respond to it because like again on this interp now you have three things you need to deal with: the it's an OCI, the net benefit of side bias, and then the link defense on reciprocity. And I think you just forget to deal with link defense on reciprocity. And this sort of brings you to another thing you should think about, which is that when you're extempting theory, you should be numbering your standards.
Mm-hmm.
You sort of just like give me everything all in one go and you don't number it. And that's fine for me, but it's not going to be fine for a lot of judges. And in general, numbering and signposting clearly is your friend because it ensures that your judge will know what you're saying and when you said it.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, if you clearly numbered your standards and it was clear you had more than just a reciprocity claim, you also had a time skew claim and a norming claim, then it seems like you have three independent pieces of offense back to the interp, and Parker's really only putting defense on one of them.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think in my head I like grouped the OCI and like you can just answer it arguments together. Like, if I like had made that clear and was like, they're like, you could just answer it in OCI or like the same claim, could I have just grouped that and answer them together?
Yeah, you could have, but they're like completely separate arguments. Like his justifications for OCI are resolvability and norming, and his argument on reciprocity is no link. It's like the classic "you can do it too" argument that like abusive debaters that read tricks do, right? And so they seem to be like three completely separate arguments. So you could group them together, but I don't see how they're related.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think Nina's right. They are like the same.
I could not hear a single thing you just said, Parker.
Oh, sorry. I was trying to stand up. Is that better?
Yeah.
All right. So I was saying I disagree. That the link to the resolvability and norming arguments is that you can just do it too, which means that if that argument is false, i.e. the link is false, then it seems like the link defense is false.
Yeah, maybe, but it seems like this is a very nuanced conversation because I have flowed on resolvability that people would run theory on paradigm issues infinitely, which would cause infinite regress. So it seems like the you can do it too there is impacted to infinite regress, not reciprocity. And so I guess if you have defense on the link of resolvability, that would be fine. And you do have one defensive argument, which is that people wouldn't read theory on paradigm issues. Like your argument is specifically indexed to education and fairness. But I think that you probably want to also put other arguments there. At the very least.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know. If I was always paranoid when I was a debater, and so I would have just 3-pointed all of it. Like I think you're missing easy arguments on resolvability. Like debates are resolvable. Judges will make a decision no matter what. Or like so what? Like people will read theory on paradigm issues. Why is that such a bad thing? You've conceded theory education is good. Who cares? Or like things like it wouldn't cause an infinite regress. There's an arbitrary ending point in a debate, which is 5 speeches, which means that you can't just go on for infinity. So your argument is like not impacted, right? Or like norm setting. You do norm setting out ways, but I think that diversifying your arguments there would help you. Um, and same on like the sort of norming claim. I think your argument on the norming claim is like, well, you shouldn't have wasted time and you could have read better theory arguments and had a better theory debate, which would have also led to more substantive discussion. So this is like a bad norm for you to start, right? But that really does sound like an RVI bad justification.
I think what happened was that when I was answering OCI is good, I was making arguments for like why it wasn't an OCI, which I thought implicitly answered the like, but you can do it too. Because I was like, if it's not just about you can do it too, then it's not an OCI.
Yeah, that makes 100% sense to me. It might be worth just taking a sentence and making it explicit.
Okay, yeah, no, I think I wasn't clear about it, but I think that's fair.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I would recommend diversifying your defense on resolvability and norming.
Yeah.
And then on case, I think you probably just missed the answers to absolute rights are a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's unfortunate.
Yeah. Like hard to flow over Skype.
Agreed.
Oh.
Yeah. And I think you handled the side bias debate pretty well. Like I don't know. Maybe it's because like I'm a scientist and I'm like really interested in statistics. I think that causality is like important, and I think that random correlation is bad. And so yeah, I think you're handling the side bias debate well, but I do think you're going for too much on the side bias debate. Like you literally go for everything. You go for like the leeway argument. You go for the topic skew argument. You go for like the people chose a bad strategy argument. You go for infinite prep time argument. So I would consolidate there if I were you. I wouldn't go for as much. But yeah, that's the 1N or 2NR. Do you have any questions?
One thing I was like thinking of doing before the 2NR, and I was like, you are probably better at theory than like this class. What if in the 2NR I just extended his argument about theory, and that's like we should care about like oppression more than abstract theorizing, so theory's bad, and then his shell goes away, and then I just spend like 6 minutes weighing like rights are better to solve oppression. Or something like that. Yeah. Like, because if it's just about the Smith card, if I just went for like the link turn to Smith for like 6 minutes.
Yeah, I think that would have been a pretty devastating 2NR. It would have been interesting. I think that the 1AR doesn't give itself as much on substance on the framework debate as it could have given itself. Especially because the 1N like is like not really responding to everything. Right, like your responses to the ideal non-ideal divide are like not particularly fantastic. It's one is like ideals are inevitable, and two is it's like something we should strive for. And I think that the 1AR could definitely extrapolate there. And so I think given that the 1AR did not do a good job on the framework debate, if your 2NR is a collapse to it, that would be devastating.
Should I have done that instead of going for a theory?
Well, yeah, and I think you could also practice the speech where you go 4 minutes substance and 2 minutes counterinterpret to the 1AR shell. Right? Like if you make the 1AR shell impossible and then you go for substance, that's also like equally viable to an R.
Yeah, or I could do both things where I'm like, oh, you said like theory doesn't matter, and then answer the shell.
Yeah, agreed. Probably a more strategic speech from a time trade-off perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Cool.
Oh, was the time allocation? I probably should have spent like more time on the AC, but like, what should I have cut down?
Time allocation wise, let's see. You have to cover this underview because otherwise you're screwed. You cover it pretty well. I think you're pretty efficient there. You obviously need more time on the framework debate. I think the major place you can obviously save time is the T-shell. Like you're reading a lot of evidence, in the one end, and like you for sure don't need to read Jake's article like cut. Like it's the topicality rule is probably dumb to begin with, but if you're gonna make it, just make it analytically. You'll save yourself like 10 seconds. That's like one easy place you can save yourself time. Another easy place you can save time is lining down your evidence more. I understand that's probably an issue of you like not just like putting together something like on the last moment. But like given how long your sort of T shell is, that's a lot of time you've lost in the debate that you don't get back. And so yeah, that would be a great place you can save time. I think on the Kant NC, you probably need to read everything you did read. And I think on the shell you read, you were very efficient, though again, you could have numbered your distinct pieces of offense, which would have been smart. So you probably can save about 30 seconds on T, which can go to the framework debate. And you can probably save a little bit of time on the bottom of the AF, like on the RVI claims. You probably give a lot of arguments there that you don't need to give as much of. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Are you guys still debating tomorrow morning?
Oh, we can. Well, now it's late, so like I don't know if I'm gonna be up at 1 in the morning. At like so.
Cool. Well, it'll be noon, not 1, so that's even earlier. Yeah. Yeah, and so why don't you guys just Facebook message me if you guys are down to debate, because I'm happy to judge it. We could also do it a little bit later if you guys wanted to, like maybe like 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll just figure it out tomorrow. Like, we'll just.
What like range of time are you free?
Like, any time before 1.
But he's debating Brianna at noon, so he's ideally the latest we start is 11 a.m.
This is being confusing because on EST versus PST.
Yeah. I was.
We should have this unified conversation. Are we using EST or PST for this?
EST.
All right. I'm having a debate with Brianna at 3, so I can theoretically drill anytime or have another debate anytime before that.
Okay.
That I'm awake for.
Okay. I think 2 would work, but like if I wake up earlier, I feel like earlier would be better. But yeah, I'll definitely be up by like 1.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's just aim for 11 for 2, because then I'm gonna like wake up and like go work out and shit. Cool.
Okay.
So let's just do 2 p.m. your time.
Okay. Awesome.
Sounds good.
Cool, guys. Talk to you guys later.
Yeah. Wait, are we talking, Paris?
Yeah.
Cool.